Welcome everybody. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Curry County's Special Districts Forum. My name is Georgia Nowlin, and I am a member of the board for the League of Women Voters, and I will be facilitating this meeting today. The League of Women Voters of Curry County has several areas of interest. We have voter service, we have advocacy, we have studies, and we have civic education. Today we're going to be learning about special districts, why they're important to us, and we hope to encourage you to engage and participate in your special districts in your community. First of all, I'd like to go ahead and take care of housekeeping and say the bathrooms are across the hall for the women, down the hall for the men. Please silent or turn off your cell phones, please. And we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to first introduce our league president, Mary Jane LaBelle, and she's going to say a few words as well as read our mission statement.
Thank you, Georgia. Welcome. I'd like to read you the mission statement of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation in government, works to increase the understanding of major public policy issues, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support, nor do we oppose candidates running for elected office. Any voting person can be a member of the League of Women Voters. We have both men and women members, and we invite you to join. There are membership forms out there on the table. At the present time, we have monthly meetings in all 3 cities, and as I said, membership forms are there. Also, there is a list, a schedule of all our forums coming up in the next few months. I'd like to introduce to you our board. Georgia sits on our board. Judy Kaplan from Brookings sits on our board. We have Ann Slacker, who's the vice president, who sits on the board. And let's see, who am I meeting? Who am I missing? Well, we have Lucy Labonte, who's the former president of the Curry County League, and Charlie Alexander, who is a former board member as well. Charlie's back there and will help answer any questions. You see posters here. We, with the library, are going to be very instrumental in working with the census. So you're going to be hearing about that. And not tonight, or not today, but later on, you'll be hearing about that and all sorts of other things we're involved in, like the redistricting forums. It's hard for me to say that. So, having said that, I am done, and I'm going to hand this back over to you, Georgia.
Thanks, Georgia.
Thanks.
Okay, before I introduce our first speaker, I'm just going to give you an idea of our format today. We're going to have our speakers take questions. They're going to take questions either during their presentation or after their presentation, and I'll indicate what their preference is before they speak. But my first speaker is Mr. Jim Cullen, and I'm going to read this to make sure I get it right for him. Okay. Jim Cullen has been serving as Curry County Assessor since 1989. As such, Jim is the longest serving assessor in the state of Oregon. You don't look at it. Jim has served on the boards of the Knoxtown Sanitary District and the Gold Beach Wedderburn Rural Fire Protection District, or RFPD. He has recently resigned from the Gold Beach Wedderburn RFPD, which services the north sides of the Rogue River to its boundaries with the Ophir and Cedar Valley RFPDs, and the south bank of the Rogue River as far east as the Old Champion Mill site. For people who live in Gold Beach, you probably know what locations he's talking about. at Knoxtown, which serviced the Rogue Hills and the Rogue Shores areas. Jim served on the board that ultimately merged into the Wedderburn Sanitary District. Jim is currently living in the city of Gold Beach and is eyeing a seat on the Gold Beach Urban Renewal Agency. Watch out, city of Gold Beach. All right, Jim, you're up.
Thank you, Georgia, and thank you to the league. If I go without the microphone, could you hear me just as well?
No, somebody said no.
Somebody said no? Okay. So, well, thank you for having me here today. I'm just going to briefly discuss what I, as a Curry County assessor, see as some of the county's responsibilities to our Curry County taxing districts. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, about 200 slides. If there's no questions, I should be able to get us out of here by 8:30. If that works for everybody. No, it's not going to be nearly that long. Like I said, I'm just going to briefly go over this material. And please feel free to fire off any questions you might have as the time, whenever you might have a question. They are passing out some tax rate summaries. I do show the tax rate summary on a couple of slides, but I know you won't be able to see it because you can barely see it off that tax rate summary. There's a lot of information there. So today, my discussion topics, I wanted, again, to talk about what I see as the county's responsibilities. I also would like to mention that the taxing districts, they have some accountability topics that you may not be aware of, and then maybe just finish up with a little bit of information on district formations and other changes. Are you raising your hand there?
No, so, oh no, I'm playing with my pen.
Okay. All right, somebody's already given me trouble here today. County responsibilities with regards to the districts. For the assessor's office to assess the properties for property taxation and then to collect the property tax. Those are both assessor's responsibilities. And then third responsibility is distribute the property tax. That's the county treasurer's responsibility, and she wasn't introduced, but our county treasurer, Debbie Crumley, is here in the back with us today, and I'm sure she'd love to have any questions you might have for her. Just real briefly, the property tax cycle, your local governments, if you're sitting on the board of a taxing district, your responsibility is to adopt a budget and certify a tax, and then turn that into the county assessors by July 15th every year. If you don't do that, you won't collect the property tax for your district. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't get an extension on that time period, but basically that's a real responsibility. You need to go through the budget process and then make sure you get those documents into us. The assessor appraises property, and really we do that all year around. But after we get those tax documents, in the intervening period, we balance the assessment roll and calculate the taxes. After September 25th, we turn over that roll to the tax collector, and then it becomes the tax roll. And the tax collector prints tax statements and sends them out to all of you, and begins the collection process. The collection process needs to begin no later than October 25th. And then by November 15th, your first property tax payment is due. And if you pay your entire property tax payment, of course, you know you get your 3% discount. So after November 15th, actually probably sometime before November 15th, maybe after the 25th, we collect the tax, turn it over to the county treasurer, and she begins distribution to the various districts. So as far as assessing properties, we're currently living under what we call ballot measure 50, which was passed by the voters in 1997. And essentially what ballot measure 50 did was the assessor is annually going to determine both real market value and maximum assessed value of taxable properties subject to the constitutional limits of measure 50. Real market value is the assessor's estimate of what your property would sell for on January 1st of the year. Maximum assessed value is the value, the taxable value that measure 50 actually limits. A lot of people like to think of measure 50 as being a limit on your property tax, that it's no more than 3% per year, but it's actually a limit on your assessed value, your taxable value. And that limit is, your taxable value is limited to no more than 103% of the prior year's assessed value. Measure 50 also froze tax rates for taxing districts. And so as of 1997, you have the frozen rate. So if your property value goes up by 3%, then you can expect that your tax will go up by 3%. There's changes to that districts can make. They can go to their voters and pass a bond measure. But again, that's going to require voter approval, or they could go to their district citizens and pass a 5-year local option tax to increase their general fund revenues. Okay, this is that tax rate summary. And I brought this today because, yes?
Just one question, Joe. I've always been confused. If you have an assessed value on your property, you sell your property, does that assessed value on the previous amount go with the property?
Excellent question. Yes, it does. The question was, if you sell your property, does your assessed value, your taxable value, essentially remain the same? And I generally get this question from people that come up from California, because as you know, down in California, they have Proposition 13. When they sell their properties down there, the new owner has a taxable value that is the value they purchased the property for. Well, that's a tough system, especially on your people just trying to enter into the marketplace, to not only have to pay the higher price for the properties, which we even have to do here in Oregon, but also to have that extra expense of the much greater taxes. I'd hate to see Oregon go do that system. But on this first page of this tax rate summary, I just think it's a bunch of really good information. Of course, my office puts it out, and so maybe I'm weird that way. But in that first column, you see the list of the taxing districts that there are in Curry County. Actually, there are some districts on that list that don't levy a tax. In the next column, the bill rate is their frozen property tax. Their frozen tax rate for those districts. The third column is the total real market value of the district. So you can see the county's total real market value is $4.1 billion. And then the next column is the assessed value. And the last column is the tax imposed, or the amount that district might expect to collect in a year. Yes?
Question.
Yes.
So you say some of the districts don't impose a tax. You can recognize that because of the last column there, the 00?
Yes.
Okay, so those, yeah.
Or the first column where there's a 00 as well.
Can you hold the microphone a little bit closer to me?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Sorry. In the next page here, you're not going to see that yellow arrow on your tax rate summaries, but really what I'm doing is just putting an arrow pointing at the code area that is for the Gold Beach district. And just since we're in Gold Beach, I just wanted to point out the group of taxing districts that levy a tax within the city of Gold Beach's boundary. And then when you go down to the bottom, you see the total tax rate for the city of Gold Beach is $11.21 per thousand. So you don't see those tax rates on your tax statement, but you do see the actual tax amounts that you actually are paying to individual districts on your tax rates, on tax statement. Steve?
And the bill rate on the front page says it's frozen and can't go up, and it go down.
Yes, it can. A district is allowed by law to levy an amount that is less than what they would collect from their permanent property tax rate. The Brookings Library District actually has done that a few times in recent years.
They don't lose that rate, though.
They don't lose the rate, no. The assessor's next responsibility is to collect the property tax. And we assess the properties, calculate the property tax on each property in the county, and send you out tax statements for those tax amounts. Potential impacts on rates, well, for sure impacts on rates are the constitutional limits of Measure 50 and Measure 5. And then, like I said, you can do, thank you. Districts can also pass bond measures or local option tax. Potential impacts on assessed values are exemptions, special assessments, or potentially urban renewal. The cities of Brookings and the city of Gold Beach have urban renewal agencies, and essentially what they're able to do with those is actually shave a little of the money that the rest of the taxing districts in those cities would have otherwise gotten for urban renewal projects. Potential impacts on taxes are discounts. Most people in Curry County pay their property tax by November 15th and get that 3% discount. Overall in Curry County, the amount of money that districts lose to that discount is about 2.5%. So you can see it's the vast majority of the properties in the county paying early and getting that discount. They're uncollectible, so people don't pay their property taxes, and eventually if they don't pay long enough, the county will foreclose on the properties. Further on down the line, the county may decide to either use that property, deed it to another public entity, or they may sell the property, and when they sell the property, the sale proceeds go back to the taxing districts based on their percentage of the overall tax collections. And then there's large value appeals have impacts on the property taxes that we collect. In Curry County, Charter has appealed their value. They appealed it about 10 years ago, and there was a law at that time that said that Charter did not have to pay the tax at that time, but until the appeal was actually settled. We like to think that we're getting close to settling that appeal. It's actually an appeal that the Oregon Department of Revenue is working on. They're the ones that did the appraisal on the Charter properties around the state. So hopefully we'll get that one settled pretty quickly. This next slide shows you a copy of what a tax statement looks like. This is of a property in the city of Gold Beach. I see that it's fairly small and it's difficult for me to read from here, and I can see some of you back there squinting. You've all seen it. Really down the right-hand column of the tax statement shows you, and what I wanted to point out to you was it'll show you there how much in property tax you're paying into the various districts within whose boundaries you live. I did highlight the county general portion. So of all the property taxes you pay on this tax statement, of the $2,300 in property taxes that they pay, about $121 of that actually goes to the county. And this next slide just blows up that section that I was talking about. And then the next county responsibility is to distribute the property tax to the taxing districts. This is not a function of the county assessor. I cannot tell you the magical calculations that our county treasurer has to go through, so I'm not really going to address that, but thank you for coming, Debbie. I did want to mention district accountability, and districts really have quite a bit of accountability. First, in their filing with the county assessor, their documents that they need to file to actually collect a tax. They actually file with other budget documents with the county clerk, and our county clerk, Renee Colin, is also here with us today. Thank you for coming, Renee. So hopefully you'll have lots of questions for Renee when we're done here too. In filing with the county clerk, it really puts documents on file for public viewing. So that's the accountability portion. And then there's filings with the Secretary of State, and I'll give you a little bit more information on that here. Can you all read that? This is one of the documents, the LB50, and any of you that work or actually our board member for one of the taxing districts are probably going to recognize this document. On this document, your board has to pass to approve this document and turn it over to the county assessor, but really it's your board is telling the county assessor how much you can collect in property tax. Now, we also keep documentation at the assessor's office, so if your permanent tax rate is $1 and you try and certify to us that you're going to collect $2, well, that won't happen. And then the other thing that the districts are responsible to file with this documentation is their resolution saying that they're going to collect the tax, which is the actual document that's approved by the board members. Filing with the county clerk, districts are required to file copies of their budgets, which are available for the public to review at the county clerk's office. But also district budgets are public records, and those districts that have offices, those documents are probably available for review at the district offices. And many of the districts may have a website, and those documents are probably available for review on their website. In any case, they're public documents, and they'd be available by public records request. Filing with the Secretary of State, districts that have budgets of less than $150,000 file a budget report with the Secretary of State annually. If their budget is between $150,000 and $500,000, they file a budget review with the Secretary of State. And if their budget is over $500,000, then they have to file an audit with the Secretary of State. Honestly, I can't tell you what the difference between those documents are, but yeah, I've served on districts, and I know that we have to file those. So one other level of accountability that the districts have. Okay, so district formation and other changes. Anyone attempting a formation, and we've had a few of them during my career as county assessor, should consult with an attorney. There's a lot lot of information that you need to go through in a formation. Or review RS Chapter 198, not saying that you necessarily have to consult an attorney, but I mean, there's certainly attorneys out there that specialize in this sort of work. It might make your jobs an awful lot easier if you're considering it. The district attorney, county counsel, county clerk, and the county assessor are prohibited from giving you legal advice in this process. So I don't mean to be passing the buck or anything here, but it's a good deal of work. Consulting an attorney is probably not a bad idea. In a district initiation or formation, I've dealt with a couple of different ways that districts do that. And one of them is, I'm wondering if I skipped a slide here. One of them is the electors method. And in the electors method, if people are going to form a district, oh good, it's up here. They must have petitions signed by 50% of all the electors in the area that they're going to form the district of, or under a landowner petition, they have to have the signatures of 15 owners of land or owners of 10% of the acreage. In either case, it's whichever is greater. If they get that, and if all the rest of the documentation is correct on their petition, then they're filing that petition. I think they actually file it with the county clerk's office, but it ultimately goes to the county board of commissioners, who is the boundary board in any county. So we also have one of our county commissioners, Sue Gold, here today. So Sue is going to be happy to take all your questions today. I hate to tell you this, but hell has in fact froze over. Sue agreed with me twice yesterday. Okay, so, but before these petitions go to the commissioner's office, the county clerk actually certifies the signatures of the electors that they're accurate, and the assessor's office will verify the ownership of the land on the landowner methods. As I said before, complete petitions will be filed with the board for public hearings, resolutions, approval, and to schedule necessary elections. Other types of changes that might occur on districts are annexations, withdrawals. And annexation is if you live outside, say, a fire protection district but want the fire protection, you can petition that board of the fire district to annex into the district. And assuming, of course, they accept you, then you'll go through the process and be included in the district. A withdrawal would be just the opposite of that. If you're inside a district and don't want the service of the district, you can petition to withdraw. I don't know that that's ever happened in my career as county assessor. Division, I've never seen a division of a taxing district. Yes?
Just one question on the annexation. Is it another district you're annexing or just different property?
Well, I was referring to just a property. If you own a property that, say, is outside even the library district, you could annex or you could petition to join that district. And generally, if it's a property by property basis, that will take place without an election. It just take an approval first by the board of the district and then by the board of commissioners. If you're trying to annex a lot of properties, you'll generally see that those go to an election. Division, I've never seen a district divide. A dissolution, I've actually seen, we've seen a dissolution of a couple of districts that were formed, but then never actually operated. And then I think there was also a health district down in Brookings. Yeah, our county clerk would know more about that. She had more to do with it. Mergers, I participated as not only the assessor, but actually a district board member in a merger where we had a small sanitary district for Rogue Hills and the Rogue Shores areas, and we were actually dumping our effluent into the Wedderburn Sanitary District's ponds, and we got together with their board and we ultimately decided it would be more efficient, more productive to merge the two districts. It actually, and that went to a vote of both districts, and it actually cost the citizens of the Knoxtown Sanitary District a little more money every year in property tax, but I think that's been a good solution for them. It wasn't long after that I had to resign from the district because I moved out of it. And then a consolidation is just really another form of combining a district. So, more questions? Catherine?
It's my understanding that the county cannot take an administrative fee for collecting or distributing the taxes from special districts. Is that correct?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that.
That's only part one.
Okay. What is true is the counties are required to provide the service of assessment and taxation at no cost to the district.
Okay.
That's the law of the land today.
Part two is...
But, may I say,
Okay, but...
it doesn't preclude a district from contributing to the assessment and taxation.
So they could do a set aside in the budget for
They could.
hypothetically X
They
percent?
could.
And would that go to your office, treasurer's office? Would it be stipulated or to the general fund?
Most any monies come into the general fund. What I would tell you is there was a bill before last year's legislature, which was called the Curry County Pilot Project, wherein we had some consensus from districts that they would like to contribute to having a stronger appraisal effort in Curry County. And so they were willing to fund part of the cost of that effort. The total cost would have been about $125,000. And the state of Oregon actually was going to be on the hook for about $75,000 of that because the the counties collect money for the schools, which really the other main source of funding for schools is the state of Oregon. And so the state was thinking that they would agree to pay the schools portion.
So the part two of that I was wondering about, because I know that there are issues about costs versus revenue, obviously, everyone does not pay their taxes by November 15th. The majority, as you said, do. So all of the money can't go at one time to the special tax districts. Is that correct? It is allocated out to the special districts as the taxes are collected?
Debbie?
Sorry, Debbie.
Oh, that's fine. So during the month of November, I pay the districts weekly. So whatever the tax office collects during that week, they turn over to me, and I have 5 days. I basically pay you within the next 5 working days.
Honestly, I don't get paid.
I send the money to the district.
And that, you're required to do that within 5 days?
Yes. Well, actually, I could have up to 10 days.
Okay.
Because the tax office has 5 and I have 10. But we do it every week, so we like to stay on top of it. So as soon as the tax collector gives it to me, which is like Monday of the following week, then I am sending ready. Then you should have it by Friday.
Okay, so then people who pay during the year,
I pay monthly.
You pay monthly?
Yes, the only time I pay weekly is during the month.
Because the reason that I asked that is one of the issues that came up with when we used to have the Commission on Children and Families is the state allocated all of the money at one time. And it went into the county coffers. And they did not charge an administrative fee, but they got the benefit of interest on that money because that money was only allocated out through the commission on a monthly basis. So when you have several $1 million sitting in the bank, there was a certain amount of revenue at that time for the county to offset.
So
Does that
the
make sense?
interest, yes. So the interest that is earned on those funds will get interest. Well, no, but at that time and on all the departments, pretty much that have a positive.
I just wondered, but you are required to have it out within 10 days then?
For the district.
That's what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you couldn't allocate money on a monthly basis and, okay,
But that's just during November.
okay.
They-
I was just trying to.
That was enough.
a different.
Right. It's a very busy time.
I have kind of a technical question, but if a district is formed and it issues bonds and it incurs debt, and then part of the district wants to leave, it can't just leave. So there's going to be an ongoing tax bill for them, right, until those debt instruments are resolved?
My understanding of that is I think part of the district can leave, but they are still on the hook for that incurred debt. The same as any other member of the district that remains in the district. Essentially the same way that the debt was voted in.
Item on there, even though they're not in the district anymore, they're going to have an item on their tax bill until that's totally resolved.
That's my understanding of it. And I've never been through that process in Curry County, but that's the way I understand it. Here's another question right here.
I've noticed that we have fire districts, cemetery districts, health districts, water districts. I don't see any police districts. What about policing and protective agencies, police and sheriff? We do get those levies on our tax bill.
There are currently no separate law enforcement districts in Curry County. Curry County has put measures before the voters for law enforcement districts in the past. None of those have been approved. There have been, say in the city of Port Orford, there has been a 5-year local operating measure that's been approved at least a couple of times for law enforcement, but that money is essentially going to the city of Port Orford and it's dedicated to their law enforcement efforts. So no police districts. What we have is the cities are responsible for providing at least police protection in the cities, and the county is responsible for the rest of the county with some overlap in the cities.
One of the problems they encounter is just outside of the city limits, there is no police protection. So they have to wait for the sheriff to come up from Gold Beach to go to the north or west end or east end of Port Orford. They have up to an hour wait or longer before they have any protection or any response of law enforcement agencies. Is there such a thing as forming a district for them that would extend the police services?
Well, and like I mentioned, there have been a couple of ballot measures for enhanced police protection throughout the county, and even separated that police protection on one of them to where people who lived outside of the cities would have one tax rate, while people inside the cities would have a lower tax rate, because the plan was to provide more police protection outside the cities, assuming the cities already are taking care of their own. Part of the sheriff's responsibility also is for the jail, though. In the jail, we just have one jail in Curry County, and so they take any customers from any of the cities as well, and that's an expense as well. Search and rescue, search and rescue could conceivably happen within cities. Honestly, I'm not the sheriff, and I didn't queue him up to be here today, so these would be good questions for him.
I would like to respond to her question. I live 3 houses out of the city of Port Orford, and my boundary line is the highway, but you can't see our house, and I had a meth addict banging on my door one afternoon, and the sheriff got called, because we're 3 houses out. I didn't, I thought the same thing. Port Orford Police was there in minutes, and the sheriff was there in 10 minutes. So they work together when you have a problem.
I think they have reciprocal agreements, just like fire districts do.
So, and that's really the dilemma for the county, which people don't quite get. I kind of remember when we were in office, I think the jail costs $1 million a year to run, is that correct, Sue?
Oh yeah, it's very...
The jail itself costs $1 million a year to run. And what's the total amount of county taxes collected right now?
Well, you can see that on the front of your tax rate summary if you've got a copy of it.
But just go ahead and state.
About 1.8 million.
1.8 million. So,
Property tax.
Property tax.
And the jail cost $1 million. I think the sheriff's department's around $1 million, isn't it? And the assessor's office, it's getting help from the state now, so it's not quite up where it was.
About 500,000.
About 500,000. So you start adding all this up, and you start wondering, where is the county going to get this money? And I think that's why they put a sheriff district on the ballot. It almost passed, but people in the city objected because they're paying for city police. So that's the dilemma the county's been facing since it really started in 1995. When the ONC monies started going away. Those are timber monies coming into the budget. So that's what the county is facing, and that's why one commissioner actually suggested maybe we ought to go after special district money. That's not a real good solution for fire districts and for library districts and so forth and so on. So anyway, that's just an opinion.
I just had to let everybody know, because I think a lot of people don't realize that.
So, yeah, you mentioned one commissioner started going after special district money. In defense of our current board of commissioners, they're really leaving no stone unturned as how to provide the services that I think that the people of Curry County would like to have. And I know that one of the things that I hear or did hear when the county put measures before the voters to fund a new law enforcement district was people would say, I think I already pay enough in taxes. What I would like to see happen is the county get more money and take some money from some of the other districts. So the commissioners do hear that from the public. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
The county can't just do that.
Would you clarify, when, say a group wants to start a new special district, and they go through the steps and the whatever, and then it ends up with the county commissioners, do they have the final say in terms of whether it's approved, or does it go to the voters? You can answer that.
It's the voter.
Okay.
Well,
In that district.
actually, I'd actually have to go back and do a little research on that, because I think it's possible that the county board of commissioners can approve the formation of the district, but if that district wants to levy a tax, that has to go to the voters of the district.
Thank you.
So it's a yes and no.
Got sense.
Research that.
Thank you all.
Questions? Thank you very much. Okay, so now we have our next speaker is Julie Rutherford, who is the director of the Chetco Community Library. And she will also take questions during her presentation. I'm going to read a little bit about Julie. Julie Rutherford has been the director of the Chetco Community Public Library in Brookings since July of 2018. She came to us from Southern Ohio, where she was the assistant director of a large library system. She has a literature and communications degree from Ohio University and a master's in library and information science from the University of Kentucky. Prior to coming to Oregon, she knew absolutely nothing about special districts. But since coming here, she's learned all about them by trial and fire. Julie.
Thank you. All right, I think we're good. Thank you, Georgia. Yeah, that's on. So as Georgia said, I haven't been here too long. I came to Oregon in June of 2018, so I've only been the director here for a little over a year and a half. So while I have learned a lot of you have been here a lot longer. So I'm going to talk about special districts in general and how that applies to my specific district. But please, if I say something wrong, raise your hand and wave at me because I'm still learning. So I guess I want to start by talking about a few different kinds of local government because I think that in order to understand special districts, it's kind of important to have a little bit of context to understand what they actually are. So there's a lot of overlap. Jim mentioned and talked about that a little bit about what the different kinds of governments do or can do. So like a library district, we are a special district. All of them in Curry County are special districts. But a city or a county can run a library if they choose to. It's really just about the funding source and about which Oregon revised statutes we follow in operation and in how it's formed. So we are a special district library, Curry is, Port Orford is, but if you go up to Coos County it looks different. I'll talk a little bit about that. It's really just about what is most efficient and what the voters want. So Oregon has 4 kinds of local government. So obviously, you know all of these. The first type is a city government. And there's several types of arrangements. You can have a city council and a mayor, which is what Brookings has. I don't know what Gold Beach actually, but city council, city administrator, a mayor and a city council, a commission, or a strong mayor that has a lot of power. Cities operate under ORS 221. So each of these is going to operate under different rules, which is one of the primary differences within them. There is county government, so Curry County commissioners. They can operate with varying number of chairs and commissioner members. There are 28 counties in Oregon, including Curry County, that has a board of commissioners with 1 chair and 2 to 4 additional members. You can also have a county court where there's a county judge and 2 commissioners. You can also have something else called home rule, which there are only 9 counties in Oregon that have that. And county governments operate under ORS 203, so they have different statutes that they have to follow. And then there's another one. This is not. I went backwards. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. So then there's regional governments, and that's not instead of these. It's in addition to. So there can be a geographical area that joins together in order to service a specific set of issues or problems. And so there are 8 regional councils of government, is what they're called, in Oregon, and it's like Metro. You may have heard of Metro. That's Clackamas, Multnomah, Washington counties, and that includes like 25 cities. And that Metro regional government kind of just works together to accomplish certain things that affect all of those cities in that area. So that's, again, it's not in lieu of a county government or a city government, it's in addition to. And metro governments operate, or regional governments operate under ORS 294. So again, different type of government, different revised statute. And so then, of course, there are special districts. So special districts are, a lot of this is going to overlap with Jim. I'll try to avoid directly overlapping what he said. But they are independent local governments formed for a specific purpose under ORS 198. So we have our own specific group of statutes that we have to abide by. We are locally controlled by voters within the district. We have a locally elected board of directors, and we are not controlled by cities or counties. We answer to the voters, same as the county commissioners do and a city council would. So there's a little star there that says except county service district. That's kind of the exception to all the rules. We talk about service districts have all of these rules and operate a certain way. The exception is those which are under counties. So a county can form a county service district to serve a specific need. And Coos County Library System is one of those. And I have been trying to wrap my head around it for 1.5 years, so I don't fully understand it. But my understanding is, you know, the commissioners appoint a board for that service district. They kind of overall manage all of the libraries in the system. Each of the libraries has their own board that is appointed, not elected, and they manage independently, but the county service district board kind of oversees fiscal, maybe some policy things. So there's some layers there, but they all are under the county. So that is the one exception to special districts running independently. Jeremy, Denise, is that right? Did I describe them correctly?
Mostly.
Mostly?
The county commissioners in Coos are actually the library board for the ESO, which is their extended services.
Okay.
And then it's kind of a hybrid, because each library within Coos also has their own board.
Elected board?
I believe so.
Okay, I thought it was appointed, but...
No, I think they're elected.
Jeremy's gonna...
They're all city. They're also, are they appointed?
Okay.
So they're appointed, but they're also all run by their cities. So part of it is city, part of it is county.
And it's even more complex than that. We really don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but basically they've segregated out different functions within those libraries. So basically what the county service district does is it covers the functions that are common and shared between all of the libraries in the county, and then functions that the library does that might be unique or individual per library are more under the city auspices.
Okay. So it's a very complex system up there, which is, you can see why I don't understand it. So I'm glad they were here. So, you know, logically it might seem that, you know, governments, there's a hierarchy according to size, you know, maybe like state, county, city, special district. That's not how it works. So it's really more this, you know, there's the state and voters are kind of over us. We have statutes and we answer to the voters. And the county, the city, and the special districts are all, none of us report to one another. You know, we don't really act in concert with one another unless we choose to, but we're not required to. And again, county service districts are the exception to that. Now, Jim already talked quite a bit about changes to special districts and how that works, so I'm not going to go over that too much. I do just want to touch on it a little bit just to allow for questions. And again, as he did, if you have questions or comments, raise your hand during, and then we'll talk. We'll have more options at the end. But for merger in particular, that was brought up, you know, has come up in conversation for specifically the Curry County libraries in recent months. And the process for that is, as he said, you know, it has to be initiated either by the boards of the separate special districts or by the electors, and then it goes to a vote. So that's the only way that different special districts can merge is by approval from the voters. And if, you know, it has to be a majority of all the voters in all the districts. So if we tried to merge Port Orford, Langlois, and Curry, and Agnes, I just blanked on the other one. So all the boards would have to agree to that. It would go to a ballot, and then the majority of all the people in all those districts would have to approve it before it happened. So it's a little complicated to merge. And I will say not terribly profitable. Again, I mean, it wouldn't turn us into a county service district, but it certainly complicates things in terms of who's in charge of what and how we can respond to our individual communities. And then tax rate reduction. Again, Jim did talk about that a little bit. That came up that has come up in conversation in surrounding the proposals by Commissioner Pash. But as he said, our tax rates is permanent. It was set by Measure 50, and that wasn't even the tax rate it was before that. I'll get into a little bit about history, but Measure 50 set us at a permanent tax rate. Our legal counsel and Special Districts Association of Oregon are in agreement, although Curry County Council disagrees, so there is some debate about what can be done and what can't be done. But you can't put a measure on the ballot to lower a tax rate for a special district. In order to lower a tax rate for a special district, you have to put a measure on the ballot to dissolve the district and then reform it at a lower tax rate. So that's two things that have to pass, and unlikely to pass, in my opinion. You know, we wouldn't really be in favor of voting to dissolve. And we don't know, I still don't know. I don't think that can be done in one measure. That's something our attorneys are still looking into. So it couldn't be like dissolve and reform.
That's correct.
Vote yes or no. Okay. So it would have to be dissolve, stop, another ballot measure, reform. And so that's a lot of risk for a special district because we would be in limbo.
In answering that question is when the ballot measures are created and presented, you cannot confuse a voter by having a yes/no answer in one question. So two separate questions.
Two separate questions. Can it be in the same voting? Does it have to be on two separate dates?
I'd have to research it out.
I mean, that would be confusing to have it on two separate dates. What if the second half passed?
So to make sure I have it right, so the first question would be, do you want to dissolve the district?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next attempt would be, we want to form a district. So I think those two processes would be very difficult to do at the same time.
I agree. So that's what we've basically gotten from our legal counsel. So I'm not sure what the counter opinion is. I mean, we'd be happy to hear it, but we haven't heard it yet. Yeah.
So at this point in time, the easiest way to have a lower tax rate is if the library order, whatever board of the districts are, were to accept a lower rate when they turn their budgets in.
Yes, and as Jim said, the library has done that in the past, so we have a set tax rate, and we can choose to levy less than that. In that form that in the LB 20, I think it is, that he showed, we can say, no, we're only going to collect this tax rate. And for several years in a row, the Chetco Library did do that. The year before I came, the board decided to then go to the tax rate that they're allowed, the full tax rate, because we have big projects coming up and some things, and so they thought it's smart for us to start collecting the full amount. That's a board decision. I mean, I can advise certain things. But again, you know, the more funds that we can collect, the more services we can provide. Sue?
And I'm just going to do further clarification. If you lower your rate, that extra money does not go to the county, it goes back to the tax.
It's just not collected at all. So there was some, like we could collect less, and that extra money would be collected and could then maybe go to the sheriff's. Doesn't work that way. If we opt to levy less, it just is not collected, period.
And one of the reasons the county has such a low tax rate is because the county commissioners, I would say maybe the early 90s, you can correct me if I'm wrong, did not levy the entire, they did not raise the tax rate when they could have. They kept it at the same level when other counties were raising the tax rate. And then when Measure 50 came along and leveled everybody, Curry County was leveled lower because the county commissioners had not raised the tax rate for several years because they had so much timber revenue.
You know, I would never correct you, Lucy, but actually it was much earlier, probably in the 50s and 60s when commissioners were not raising their levy as allowed by law at that time. At that time,
maybe the early 90s, McVeigh board might have done that too. Very early.
I don't think in the 90s, no.
Look it up.
I was there.
All right, let's move along. Okay, so the next thing, and if any of you were at the SDA, the County Commissioners event up at the Elks, thank you. I stole some of this information from Frank Stratton, who is the director of Special Districts Association of Oregon, so I'm repeating some of this information. But I think it's important to identify what is not a special district. So you have to make a difference between a taxing district and a special district. So all of these different government types all collect taxes, but that does not make them a special district. In practice, it doesn't make a ton of difference because you're seeing the tax bill one way or the other. But when you're talking and trying to figure out how to change things, how to change tax rates, it's important to recognize that there are differences. So these things, school districts, education service districts, community college, cities, counties, public utility boards, electrical co-ops, urban renewal districts, local improvement districts, those are not special districts. They either are taxing districts themselves or they're not taxing districts and they just collect money in other ways. So then those are what's not. So the city, the county, those sorts of things, they're not special districts. They operate under different revised statutes than we do. And then there are a lot of different kinds of special districts. Special districts are created to fund and manage a very specific need. So like I said before, a city or a county can operate a library or a fire district or those sorts of things, but they have to have the money to do that. And so I think even historically, Chetco Library was a city library. I don't know. It was operated, I think, by the city years ago. And when a library, although very important service, obviously I believe that, or I wouldn't be in the job I'm in, if you're competing with police, it's easy to cut library funding when there's a competition for limited funds. And so when libraries get cut and libraries get cut and libraries get cut, or a cemetery or a fire district because there are other things that take precedence or have to be paid, then it gets kind of forced into this place where the best option is to have a special district because it's its own thing. The community people who are voting can decide how much money they want it to have, and it has that money guaranteed that it doesn't have to fight other entities for. And so there are a ton of different kinds, and there's a list in ORS 198 about what can and cannot be a special district. There obviously are a lot of options: libraries, fire, some county service districts like we talked about, road things can be. So there's all sorts of things that can be special districts. That doesn't mean they have to be special districts. So that causes some confusion, I think, just because things can be run by any one of the three entities. So even though we are all different, special districts are a government and we are subject to the same laws and requirements that cities and counties are. So we have things that we have to do. We are, all of our board meetings are public and all of our records are public and subject to public records laws. We have to do if we have a big project over a certain threshold, dollar amount threshold, we need to do RFPs and we need to go through these processes to make sure everything is legal, the same as any government entity would. We have a public budgeting process, which for all of us is coming up soon. We're starting to work on that, and we'll have public budget meetings, and we have a budget committee that consists of half is the library board, 5 members of our board, and the other 5 is appointed people from the community that the board elects and appoints. So all of that is public. We put out all of the information about what we're spending, what we're going to do, what money we're going to get, and we invite public comment. So that is always that way. It always has been that way. I don't know that people often come to those, but it's out there. So if you want to come, please join us. I think our budget committee meeting is in April or May. It'll be publicized, which is also a rule. We have to publicize it in a publication to let people know, have notice the same way as there are for city council and commissioner meetings. So special districts are property tax or fee supported, like Jim mentioned earlier. So you can form a district and then approving a tax amount is a separate process. So you can have a district that doesn't have any funding, and that happened to the library when it was first formed, actually. For the first year we were a district but had no tax support. So you can have a district that is funded otherwise. And again, we are controlled by what's under ORS 198. We can't provide or fund services outside of our legal authorization. And that means, you guys have dictated a certain amount of tax revenue that is supposed to come to the library for library services. So we can't then say, I want to donate this money to this nonprofit, because that's not why we have the money. We are obligated to the taxpayers to spend the money for library services. So that there have been mentions of possibilities of how to do this when Commissioner Pash requested that Chetco Library give money to the county sheriffs and to a couple of the smaller library districts in Curry County, because we have our capital improvement fund. And we did consult with our attorneys to see, is this legal? And we were told no. The exception to that is we can give money and we can enter into an interagency contract per law to pay for services together that benefit both entities. And so if we enter into an agreement for the county sheriffs to patrol library grounds and we were to give money to the sheriffs for that, that would be legal and appropriate. It's hard to make a link, in my estimation and in our board's estimation, to say that we can give money to the county sheriffs when we are in Brookings city limits and it doesn't directly benefit library services. Now it does benefit the county and people who live in our district in a way, but it doesn't impact library services. So it's a tenuous link for us to make, and one that we aren't in favor of. But I say all that to say that there are ways for us to partner with people and help fund if it's going to benefit library services and if it's going to benefit the voters who want those library services. So
if you're looking for something, there's the county assessor.
yeah, I got you. I'll put it in the budget. Come to the meeting. So any questions about that before I move on to history or comments? No? Okay, we'll have more time in a bit. So I just want to apply this information a little bit to, I have been all along, but a little bit what the Chetco Community Public Library District looks like and how this is all applied to us. So Brookings has had a library in some form or another since 1924, and there's a long history of where it was and how it was funded. In the, from the 20s to the early 50s, it was located inside the Central Building in Brookings, and it was only open, in the beginning anyway, for about an hour a week. In 1954, we obtained what is now the Head Start building on Redwood Street, and we were there until early 90s. So that was the library for a very long time. In 1983, someone else already mentioned the ONC monies going down. The library was funded. I guess that would make it through the city. Did the ONC monies funnel through the city or through the county? County. So then we got our funding that way, and we lost significant funding when ONC monies declined. So at that time, in 1990, then the, 83, the voters made the library a special district. And the county commissioners did initiate that process, which they can do. They can initiate the process, and then it goes to the voters. And then once a special district is formed, then it becomes its own independent government outside of the county commissioners. But they are one entity that can start that process. So that year, our tax was not passed, so they stayed where they were. And then in '84, I think there was a nominal tax rate approved. And then later in 1990, voters approved a big increase for more services and a better building. And so that began the process of getting the building built where we are now over on Alder Street. I don't remember the tax rate, I should know it, but I don't remember what the tax rate was before that. But in '97, Oregon Measure 50 passed, which assigned that permanent tax rate. And that's where we are now. So our current tax rate is 0.4256, which means $42 per $100,000 in property tax value. So if you live in our district, which actually is from the California border just up to south of Pistol River, and I was noticing the tax monies on there, we might share district boundaries with a couple other because their taxable income was exactly right, and I didn't know that, but it was this South Curry Cemetery District and something else. So I actually referenced this, I'm glad you brought this, that I was talking about this in mine. Something to just make note of, and he did, but I just want to point it out a little more directly, is that you don't There's a lot of mention of there being 42 special districts in Curry County, and that's just seems like it's outlandish. But no single person is paying into 42 districts. You know, you're, like he pointed out in these secondary pages, it's based on a very specific where you live and what districts you belong to. So you might pay into 10 districts, but you're not paying into all of those. And there's also been some talk that 42 special districts, I'm not sure what that number is exactly. I've looked for that list. I think there might be some overlap in what people are referring to as taxing districts and special districts, but I can't quite get it straight in my head. Maybe someone else knows that more than I do. No?
I think actually people tend to call districts special districts.
Okay.
Just as a way of referring to them.
Yeah. And also, I mean, there could be 42 special districts, but this is, maybe some of them don't get taxed, and so they're not on here.
It's probably including the cities.
Yeah, which are not special districts, they're just taxing districts, yeah.
This is a complete listing of the taxing
So it would say zero?
districts. Yes.
Okay, okay. So in that measure 50, it's that assessed value at 90% of what the 95, 96 assessed value was. So that's where they get that permanent tax rate number, and that's why it varies, and that's why it's totally different than what our tax rate was before that. And as he said, we are allowed to get that 3% increase every year. That's been mentioned a few times. All taxing districts get that. It's just the cap for, you know, if your property tax goes up 10%, or not your property tax, your property value goes up 10%, you don't want your tax rate to go up 10% also, so there's just that cap. But everyone takes it, barely covers cost of living. You should see PERS and insurance costs rising for employees. It's not like our actual in-pocket money is skyrocketing because of that 3% every year. So we have a 5-member elected board, as I've mentioned. They each serve 4-year terms. If someone leaves during the middle of their term, then the remaining board members appoint someone just to finish out that term, and then they have to go up for re-election as well. We operate independently, as I've said. The board has bylaws that dictate what they're in charge of. They are ultimately responsible for all of it, but particularly fiscal oversight, strategic direction, and policy, and then I manage the day-to-day. And the library, well, let me see. I just wanted to say, somebody mentioned, Debbie, I think, you know, that our tax payments start coming in November, and then we get them monthly after that. And it's important to note, just because it's been an issue for a couple of districts even since I've been here, is that our money starts coming in November, but our fiscal year starts July 1st. So it's part of a really big part of that budgeting process is making sure we have enough reserves to cover our operating costs from July until November before we start getting that money. So while you're looking at special district budgets, keep that in mind, that it's not just July 1st to June 30th and then it's a clean start at zero. We have to plan for the next several months as well. So as I said, our meetings are open to the public. We're subject to public records requests. We are audited annually, and we pay for that. And our audits are available on the Secretary of State's website. We're legally required to turn those over. And we had a perfectly clean audit this year. I just want to point out, not a single ding on it. So that is all I had.
I have one last question. We've had quite an upheaval of so forth. How much have you spent? I guess you've spent quite a bit on legal advice as well as time spent on these issues that have come forth.
I don't know that I have a number in mind. I mean, I have consulted with 2 different attorneys who have charged their typical, you know, $120 hour rate or whatever it is for several hours. Yeah, one was that much and then another one was a lot higher. And then SDAO has been supremely helpful. We pay them already, but I mean, they have sent people here. I don't know that I can estimate out if you are looking at staff time and my time and Jeremy's time and Denise's time and my board members' time. It's hard to quantify that, but this was certainly my life for 2 months I would say it was a daily thing that came up. If not direct meetings or conversations, then phone calls and emails and questions and people coming into my office at the library to protest or do any number of things. So after the last round of meetings, it was just kind of like, okay, I'm done directly addressing this, I think, for a while until something else happens. But it's fine. I mean, I do understand. I understand the county's dilemma. I understand that you have to look for ways to fund what you need. And so, I don't know, I don't take it too personally, but it was an exhausting couple of months. And I will say that despite all of that, and I do think it's been kind of a blessing and a curse, this whole thing, because I think that this focus on special districts and my library in general has brought light to special districts and given opportunities for education and for people to understand special districts and in particular libraries and why we need the funding that we do and what's so valuable about them and what we do for our communities. So even though it was exhausting, I think it did have a positive outcome. Yeah.
So there was a silver lining.
There's always a silver lining. You might have to look hard for it, but it's always there. Any other questions? Yeah.
It seems like libraries are experiencing a resurgence, and maybe you could tell us if that's true, but I mean, even like in really small towns, I read an article in the Ruralite where people are building little boxes out in front of their houses and stocking them with books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, little free libraries.
Yes.
I think that it's hard for me to, I guess, comment too much because I've been in libraries that it all feels like it's always been there for me. But I do think they are getting a little more focused because our maybe it's too philosophical, but I think our society is changing so much and there's a lot of people who are struggling and there's a lot of negative things happening and libraries step in and help a lot of those situations and a lot of those people. And so I think that they are getting more of the focus that is owed to them, I think, because libraries have always been doing that. And I think it's important to note, a lot of people view libraries, even still, as book places. You go and get a book, and while that is always going to be a staple of what libraries do, it's just a small portion. I mean, we do so much, and programs and education and partnering with educational institutions and other community partners and community meeting space and just somewhere to be. I mean, there's not really anywhere in our society anymore that you can just go without being expected to buy something and then move along, And so a library, they're kind of the new community centers also. It's just a place for people to interact and to and grow together. Sue?
I'm just going to put in a plug for your online reading. Use it every day.
Thank you.
It's great.
Yeah, I do too. There's a lot of resources. You can get free ebooks and audiobooks online from your phone. And Mango, we banded together through Curry County, and you can learn a language with an app called Mango. There's all sorts of things. You can just go look at any of our websites, and you'll be surprised by everything that we do. And it's weird because we market them all the time, and still people know nothing about them. So it's word of mouth that helps, for sure. All right, anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Actually, speaking of silver linings, the League of Women Voters have been talking about special districts because we felt that people did not know much about them. And operating in the shadows could be good and bad. And in fact, our next speaker will talk about some of the challenges when people are not paying attention at all to their special districts. But I will say this has been a shot in the arm for our discussion on special districts. I doubt if many of you would have come if it hasn't been some of the controversy that had come up in recent months. When we were talking about this back in June, we weren't sure what kind of a turnout we would have for this. So appreciate it, and it is a silver lining. Thank you for your work on this, all the libraries and everybody else. So our next speaker is Hal Fitzgerald, and he will take your questions after his presentation. and he is the board chair of the Langlois Water District. And I'll read his introduction here. Warren Hal Fitzgerald and his wife Judy, I think Judy's there, back in the back there, moved from Lehigh, Utah, August of 2015 to the great state of Oregon, and currently resides in the world-famous town of Langlois. Hal is a retired veteran and federal technician serving 32 years. Hal is now the chairman of the board for the Langlois Water District, and his wife Judy serves as the secretary for that board. So Hal, I'm going to have you come up. Thank you for waiting. Patience.
Well, I have the microphone so that one of two things can happen. You can hear me speak or I can sing. I recommend a speech. Hey, thank you for this opportunity. It's been quite a while since I've addressed a group, 4 years and 11 months to be exact. We also are learning and being mentored by people within the county. Renee, I just want to tell you thanks. You and Shelley, she's got her mentorship in and corrected some of my misthinking during my learning process. So. Anyway, I believe our assignment was to speak a little bit about ourselves, what brought us here, how we became interested, the importance of the community interest in boards, governance, structure, and challenges we've had. So Judy and I rolled in town, as mentioned, in a great place of Langlois in August 2015. As stated, it's not a city, it's not a town, but it is a great community. We didn't find out it was world famous until after we arrived. We were so lucky. After a year or so of renovating and a new acquired project property, we sought to hook up to the local water system. It was at the time we met a few of the people who worked in the water district, and it didn't take us long to start a friendship. Soon afterwards, we were being recruited by the current board to look at the board positions. I can't begin to tell you the flood of emotions that hit me one day when one of the current board members approached us at a local event and said, "I hear you and Judy are planning on running for the water board." I said yes, and the response was a multitude of thank you, thank you, thank you. I knew there was more to the story, especially after the same scenario played out at least 4 times with the same person, who did a fantastic job, by the way. I'm fortunate enough to have my father still around. I still like to seek his advice on important decisions. Sometimes it's just for the advice itself, sometimes for the visit, and sometimes so he can still feel the importance and value of his great dad. As I spoke with him, I expressed my appreciation for an opportunity to retire at 55 and my desire and willingness to give back and offer our services to support our newfound community. Dad was understanding, but he's also very wise. He cautioned me, "You don't know what skeletons are hiding or where they're hiding." You're the new folks in a small town where people have known each other for generations. I'd give it time before you make such a decision, and I'd think long and hard about what you're doing. Dad got me thinking, we are new in a small town. We're from out of state, not from California. I'm a retired military veteran, a retired lieutenant colonel, leaving huge responsibilities and over 150 employees. I knew I had a transition process to go through coming back to the civilian sector. But the bottom line up front was I didn't take Dad's advice. Army ethos such as duty, honor, and country, and serve something bigger than yourself overrode. Judy and I, side by side, jumped in with both feet for a brand new adventure. We started attending water district meetings, the current board did their best to run them under Robert's rules. I still thought I was in a staff meeting with our two-star general. And who encouraged senior officers to surround yourself with others that don't think like you. Wow. That seemed opposite of the norm. As humans, I think we all like to have our opinions be valued, spot on target, be right, and make ourselves look good. The brilliance of that statement encourages diversity and many points of view to be brought forward and up for discussion when trying to reach the best possible solution to a situation or a problem. The trick with that, however, is to create and manage a mature environment that encourages such a dialogue. All equal and honest dialogue to be brought up and discussed. One idea may feed another to determine the best course of action, or the end state, as they call it. It's not a group think tank approach when a military staffing format is used. Judy and I learned the local board protocol over the next few months, attending the meetings and getting the feel for the organization. Judy and I ran for office, we were elected, then sworn in. A few referred to us as, in negative terms, as the newcomers. While the majority of the town accepted us with strong support and open arms. Later, I think I kind of realized why. Because as they were congratulating us, I think maybe they were conceptualizing removing the t-shirt with the red target printed on the back from their torso to ours. With sarcasm and humility intended, we learned many great and wonderful things. Langlois Water District has a 5-member board. The actual water district is within the general populous area, which is within the voting district. This was also a hard lesson I learned from the county. Those residences that are south of Bonner Road are in a district, and those on the north side of Bonner Road are out of district. Only those registered voters that live within the district can be considered to run for office, according to the county rules. And the way the district was originally set up, this further restricts interested potential candidates willing to run for office in close surrounding areas for consideration. So, as we heard today from Tom? Jim, okay, is that, there are things that can be done, but it probably requires some heavy thought as if the effort is going to outweigh the benefit or vice versa. Langlois Water District has 115 active accounts. Many of the board members have served before, and some more than once. Some for extended periods of time, and even as long as 14 years. Some board members have served on other boards simultaneously, which is not against the rules. It is encouraged as per SDAO doctrine. The benefit of that is a lot of the processes are the same. The doctrine and rules might be a little bit different. A few seem to step up to the plate in our community, while the majority do not. When Judy and I joined the board, many of the community members were frustrated over high water costs as well as several other issues. The district manager was wanting to retire in a year, and the board chair, vice chair was leaving at the same time. We learned later in that year that 2 other board members, who were also the husband and wife, decided to move out of state. For that and several other reasons that I won't get into, it all came down at once. Judy and me found ourselves as the only 2 remaining members left on the board, with all employees. Talk about an adventure. We hired one back. I don't think it was really legal because there was only Judy and I. So anyway, we hired him back. We kept the water on. And the county was quick in supporting us and selecting a member from one of the 3 applicants that submitted earlier. And Sue, we appreciate your help with that. With a new and legal quorum of 3, we were able to move forward. Rather than address any of the details and issues, I would like to point out the observations I've personally observed while bring to light the challenges of the small water system in a special district. Federal, state, and regulation requirements for training and certification, the same is required for all like-type water systems. And the requirements differ only by the size, the type, and the type of systems you use. I think population is also a consideration, and any other specific endorsements you may need for that water system. Numerous on-site hours of documented training, comprehensive testing are required for levels for certification. Cost of training employees in a small water system through salary, training, and benefits can be hard. Recruit and train board members with obstacles such as no interest, commitment issues, work conflict, fear, laziness. Becoming involved with the community or responsibility is not a desire. Community members who have fought, or we have found willing to serve on the board, or those who are willing to step up and have stepped up in some cases. Some are new to the area, and some, if you hit them and the timing is right, you might catch a salmon, right? So. We announced the need for 2 replacement positions on the board. We received 3 applications. One was eliminated by the county because they're on the wrong side of the road, and they were out of district. Another was eliminated because he owned property within the water district, but lived outside of the water district. These were all new to me and just a little frustrating as I learned the lessons. We're only successful by approaching possible candidates and asking them to serve. Luckily, we found 2 great people, one an RN and one local kid that figured it was his turn to step up. For some reason, utilities seem to be one of those luxuries we have that are often taken for granted. The water works, the shower's hot, the toilet flushes, house heats up, lights come on, and we pay the bill. Many don't even think of what's required behind the scenes, especially if you're not a city or a privately owned utility. A lot of volunteer work. It's difficult to find employees who want to work and train for long-term commitment. Investment in human resources costs money. Nepotism is and can be a problem in small communities. I believe that some of it is intentional, while some of it is the only way to fill voids and vacancies, and it should be avoided at all possible costs. All corporations experience stagnation. People get tired. Actions become routine. The creative juices stop flowing. Survival mode becomes the theme of the day. I believe the great energy comes from different people who are excited for what's to come, the achieving goals, and to move forward. This is definitely a responsibility of the leadership of the board and through the support of the town. Pay is not proportionate to skill level required within small special districts. Our lead workers could go work at Salem for 3 and 4 times the salary they're making working for us. And personal reasons are usually the only thing that keeps them where they're at. They like the community, they have family based there, they don't want to move to the bigger cities. Finding someone with experience in education, experience in personnel issues, requirements, record keeping, state law, decipher state legislation and bills, read the language of lawyerese, further challenges are replacements of good personnel. Neglecting keeping policy and procedures and resources updated is a guaranteed way to ensure lots of hours of research and time in correcting those processes for the replacements you leave behind. aging water systems, outdated water systems, deteriorating distribution systems, rising material replacement costs, chemical cost increases, labor rates, permits, engineering requirements are all challenges we deal with. Increased cost of chemicals. We have one chemical, it's about $275 a drum. Shipping is $400. And frequency and types of testing is required by state. Now this is a good thing. It keeps the water healthy, on track. It identifies indicators of potential bigger problems at times. But those tests increase. The types of tests are increased. And if you come up a little bit below the expected standard, retesting is required. Every one of those tests equals labor, mileage, man hours, and it can put a hit into the budget. Knowledge of resources, asset management, grant process, legal requirements, engineering requirements, community debt, contracts, loans, are all knowledge required or need to be learned. Our water plant has a life cycle rating of 20 years in moderate climate. It is now 42 years old. Life cycle management planning are essential for replacements when needed, but very hard to obtain on small budgets and minimal income. I understand that this is a common issue throughout the state of Oregon and up and down the coast. Inflation in general, while trying to balance operation costs for quality service and reasonable pricing, is a challenge. Oregon Association of Water Users is a great organization. It's a go-to source for questions, problems, advice that water districts operations have. They recommend a 3% increase per year to the water rents to keep current. We haven't raised our water in 2 years now. Foresight is a learned process to estimate lead time, to identify needs, set goals, make plans, permit, build, and construct. Legal issues. Recently learned that you can't call cities for references about, hey, what contractors did you use? How'd they do? Who's good? Who's bad? They legally can't answer those questions. So I hear horror stories of new plants that are installed that aren't working. A new membrane plant in Oregon that reduced the water production after they spent over $1 million. You know, so you want to make smart decisions, but it's about, you know, in order to do that, you've got to ask questions and gain knowledge and information to base those decisions on. We also struggle with declining population and the demographics. With very few people moving in, and a few of the younger folks moving back to work family farms and ranches. That is great for the community, but they're not within district. They're farms and ranches. The 2010 demographics for Lincoln showed a population of 671. Currently shows us at 242. A median age of 56.8 years old. This is, okay, so obviously it makes it quite difficult to recruit the work base. And so many are wanting to enjoy retirement. They want, you know, just want to be left alone, do their thing, and I get that. But the demographic from the town we moved from in Utah, I looked it up, and it's, the mean age is 23. We have a lot of IT going up there too, so we bring those young, smart people in. So how do you improve while you sustain quality service is the name of the game, and money drives the train. how or what to do, or even where to start. And by the way, what the hell is a special district? The existing board members were insistent that my wife and I attend the SDA Board of Directors Management Staff Meeting event being held in Cottage Grove. There was no money in the budget to pay for the travel, lodging, meals, and conference fee in the budget, so we paid our way. Another reality, volunteer status cost me money as well as time. Goodbye and so long to the days of federal travel and per diem. SDAO travels the state annually, making several stops in key locations and offers this type and other types of training. The SDAO training is the best resource and training that any new board member can receive. They provide resources to include detailed management policy resource guides, annual updates to handbooks for board members that cliff note common policy procedures for day-to-day management. I bring that handbook to every board meeting. It is just like a major job interview I had as a second lieutenant. While attending the interview, I put the regulation in front of me. And I put it in front of me at the table and told the colonel, I may not know the answer to every question you ask me, but the technical answers are in that reg. I know how to find them. And I got that job, and it was the job that launched my officer career. SDAO has provided that service. They have consolidated state, federal requirements and translated them from lawyerese to understandable terminology. This is brilliant in the sense that it provides clarity and standardizes the actions by taking out opportunity for misunderstanding or interpretation problems. They promote the best practices from successful special districts. They provide a website which allows board members to open forum with other special districts for problems and questions which better all. They offer incentives for the most improved special districts. We recently took advantage of a matching fund safety and security grant to improve security at our facility. The saving is $5,000, which is good when your annual budget is $150,000. I have requested a white hat inspection from SDAO to come in and assess our operation. I wanted to know where the problems were. And they let us know they would. They set up an appointment. They came in and went through everything. They gave us an out briefing. They provided us a write-up within a reasonable time. I recall it being less than a week. Sent it to us, and now I had a punch list of goals and things we needed to fix. I am smart enough to take advantage of smart people and resources. SDAO does provide insurance that we participate in for special districts and their assets. I'm told it's very competitive, although I never personally verified this. It currently worked well for us when we had a power strike that took out both of our intake submersible pumps for the second time last year. At one time, and at that time the insurance paid the claim. SDAO website is consistently updated with new information as announcements, services, human resource service, and support. State law updates, and training toolkits, even a new one, how to recruit new members to the board. And also leadership training for employees. I see proactive action from SDAO to better inform, update resource, identify and disperse information, and programs to improve not only special districts, but the leaders in the town so the information is standardized and successful. I would be remiss not to mention that I've also experienced not so pleasant experiences with SDAO. No organization is perfect, including Langlands Water District. In all honesty, time has provided me the experience to better understand the role of SDAO and what their responsibilities are versus that of a local special districts board to resolve their own issues. Personal opinion, there's recent discussion about the need for special districts in this county. I personally pondered this. I did a little staff work in my mind to eliminate special districts. You know, there's some things that would maybe work better under the county, but there's also a lot of cons. And in my line of work, we've learned to work objectively. So, one of the benefits would be consolidation of trained employees would work for us under a pay and benefits system that would retain them, that would offer health benefits, a retirement system, whatever benefits county employees have. So that's positive. The con is the counties provide the training and the expertise is at the water plants. At each, special district. And the county should provide training for board members while keeping current with documents, laws, and sustaining training annually for new board members who are appointed or re-elected. The con is it's a duplication of effort. It's already being done. The county would have to accept the problem of deteriorating water plants, replacement, repair, maintenance. This could be beneficial if bigger contracts were let, maybe eligible for discounts. County resources could help with contracting. Land issues, permitting, the con would require a higher tax base and eliminate existing grants specifically written for certain projects and sizes and purpose within those districts. Consolidation for bulk treatment, chemical ordering, and purchase and delivery could save us a lot of money. The con is if we just organize as water districts now, we can already achieve that purpose. Fiscal year, the tax revenue received to us is roughly 14% of our fiscal budget. You've got, I think we got 21,000 this year of 150,000. Fiscal law appropriation. I'm a retired deputy United States property and fiscal officer. Sounds super impressive. It's just a lot of freaking work. But I'll tell you, I know a little bit about fiscal federal law, and there's an appropriation and purpose violations that we're always finding out about. And I know that federal law requires the money intended for a specific appropriation cannot be used for anything listed under that appropriation. If federal money is received, it must be utilized under federal rules and under that appropriation for that intended purpose. I do not know how the state law reads in regards to the various types of special districts or with fiscal. Water lives solely off income generated from monthly water rents and the tax money we receive from the county. I don't know the legal requirements surrounding donations to special districts. I would imagine that they would be used for their intended purpose, especially if tax deductions were utilized by those donating. I would recommend a legal review for any of those. All in all, management of a small water district is challenging. If you lose your top person who is working for an already reduced rate, our guy right now is working for $12.50 an hour, our main guy. And we just finished his evaluation. I'll be requesting the board give him a pay increase of $2 an hour. But, I wanted to get some certification done, so I'm holding some money over his head, a little motivator there. All in all, you can reasonably expect job announcements to go unfilled for years in such cases. One community in Oregon has had a main plant operator out for bid for 3 years. Hiring and bringing up employees through the system seem to be a good option. While hopefully the employees who's covering down is willing to certify, test, and aspire to the next vacated position. We currently have an acting district manager who is pursuing a certificate for a direct responsible charge, which is the main person that certifies the quality of the water. He's the one whose keister's on the line to ensure that the water meets the health requirements. This takes a lot of time and resources, and you have to build up hours, not over months, but over years. Path forward, I never was trained to list a bunch of problems without resolutions to those problems. Langlois is also unique in the fact that some of the board members donate their time and resources for the betterment of the district while training our workers. Our treasurer has been diligent in setting up great fiscal year budgets to ensure they are done accurately and as required, transitioning budget tracking from local spreadsheet format to what we had in the past to QuickBooks. We had a huge problem with water accountability. We had a rate study, water study, and it came back that 57% of our processed water was unaccounted for. That didn't hit me very well. And nobody could say why. It hit me even worse. So it started a stream of events that got resolved, and 2 months ago our report was 90%, which made Langlois one of the top 5 in Oregon. And we're still working that and finalizing that process, because 9% now is too good. So I just want to make sure we know what reality is. We replaced every residential and commercial meter, and that helped a lot. We accounted as close as we could for any flushing and purging of the water lines. And then we put the kibosh on drive-by fire hydrant fill-ups. Really? It's amazing to take advantage of those. So anyway, stealing water. Those actions alone increased our water rents by about $1,500 to $2,000 a month. I mainly focus on training organization of processes and plan upgrades and replacement. I will be addressing with the board plans of action, phasing those repairs chronologically by setting goals and working the funding problems associated with that. We're still perfecting each and every process, documenting them into an operational policy. Pumps were replaced at the water intake twice this year. Many pumps at the plant were replaced due to reaching their life cycle expectancy. We submitted for and received a forgivable loan through USDA. This money was used for a complete engineering evaluation of the whole water plant. This report will provide us guidance to help determine priorities for upgrades, replacements, and repairs. This report is due to us in a few weeks. Once we get that, we'll sit down as a board, we'll lay down our most urgent priorities to our least urgent, develop a phasing plan where, okay, this year or this next 18 months, this and then that. We're on, at least we have a plan, we're on the road to recovery, and then we go out and look at grants, and it's very hard for me to think, how do you indebt a community that has a mean average of 56.8 years old, but some things have got to be done. So I just want to be able to stand for our community and say, I did this the smartest way possible. The board had your best interests at heart. And we did things honestly, ethically, and with transparency. So thank you for your time. And I guarantee you the talk was better than this evening. Were there any questions? You're going to let me off that easy?
No, we've run out of time, I'm
All right,
afraid.
great.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, everyone, thank you for attending. Thank you, Sue Gold, for being here, our elected county official, and I think you're the only one here. Thank you, all of you who serve on special district boards. I know we have Joe Reber here from the Langlois Library. And you do this out of the goodness of your heart. You get paid nothing and you get to pay your own way everywhere. So thank you for your time and your commitment to our lives. Thank you so much. I need the board for 5 minutes after this, please. Thank you.